Hello folks, Saber Thunderman here from the FX-Saber forums, here to talk about my Saber V lightsaber. A little bit more in depth than the quick stinger video I shot to demonstrate it. So first I'll talk about the design, and then I'll talk about the building. So design-wise, this is, as you can tell, a Graflex inspired lightsaber. Probably the closest thing I'll actually get to a Graflex, given that I'm not a massive fan of the Graflex design myself. But I thought I'd have a little play around with the shape and features of it. So this is a mix of scratch-built parts and MHS parts. Scratch-built parts mostly on the front, and this is an MHS base, well, it's an MHS extension. And yes, a fair amount of custom 3D printing on it, as you can tell there, and on the inside. I'll show that in a bit. And I gotta say, this is the first time I've really attempted 3D printing on this scale. So my local hackspace, of which I am a member and now a director, purchased a Prusa i3 Mark III, top-of-the-line 3D printer last year, and this allowed me to push the limits of what I could do with 3D printing a little bit harder than what we had with our previous 3D printer, which was handmade by a member and generously on loan to the hackspace. Major 3D printed designs and elements. For a start, we've got these little grips. I put 4 on instead of the 5, 6 or 7 that you're meant to have on a regular Graflex. I also designed a Covertech-ish knob, slightly smaller than the regular Covertech belt clips. So I never realised just quite how big they were until I got some 3D models of them, and I just shrunk them down a little bit. I also managed to, I'm quite proud of this, 3D print a custom pommel with threading that is compatible with MHS threading. Now, out of my respect for the custom saber shop, I am not going to tell you what I did or how I did it. So let's have a look at the crystal chamber. Underneath this little long flap here. Nice little glowing pixel accent. Keep it in frame. Little glowing pixel accent powered by FX-SaberOS's pixel accent option. Let's seal that up. And then let's open up the insides. So this being an MHS extension, it just unscrews. So let's do that. This unscrews, revealing, yes, hopefully this comes across. This is the bottom half of the the chassis, featuring the recharge port and the small FTDI adapter, because I'm using an Arduino Pro Mini rather than a Arduino Nano, which has no USB connector. So yes, this lifts up. Held on my magnets, very nice, nice and snappy. Like to remove the chassis entirely, I've got to undo the little grub screw right here, and then undo the 2 bolts that hold the activation box, just lightly, so that the hole can slide out. So this is the entirely 3D printed chassis. I put a little bit of brass accents and aluminium tubing accents on it, mainly for decoration's sake. There's not really much point to it otherwise. Yeah, so that's what's inside it. I will just quickly put it back together and we'll talk about the design. So I designed this lightsaber about a year and a bit ago now. Shortly after I finished my Sith Rose. Yes, then I took a commission from a friend, and that ended up eating up the better half of it for 6 months. I got back to this lightsaber and finalising its design in September last year. So I really had 3 goals when I came up with the design for this saber. Goal 1, I wanted to try NeoPixels. Goal 2, I wanted to go for a fully 3D printed chassis, because as I said, my Hackspace just acquired a better 3D printer, and I wanted to test out its limits. So what better way to do that than 3D printing a lightsaber? Goal 3 was that I initially wanted to reuse some scraps from a previous build. So I had these two MHS sections left over from my Carl Katarn Eastern 57 replica. I wanted to do something with them. So I designed this lightsaber. I'll include a little Tinkercad model of my original design. So I designed this lightsaber around them. As you can tell from that Tinkercad model, my initial design was completely different from what it ended up being. I'll explain that as I go. So I designed the chassis using the finest 3D modelling software known to man, Tinkercad. Yes, I'm being highly sarcastic there. The chassis went through several iterations. The first design worked great on paper, but Sega's NeoPixels have to use thicker gauge wire than standard RGB LEDs. I ended up coming up with so many little crown through problems that weren't visible until I actually assembled it, that yeah, I just ended up redesigning the entire chassis 2 or 3 times before I settled on the final iteration that's present in the Saber. So around last December, I had the final version of the chassis pretty much printed and ready to be put into service, and I started on the initial metalwork of the hilt. I had intended to finish this hilt before I went over to family at Christmas, but once more I didn't really have the time, so yeah, I had it about 80% done in December, and then the remaining 20% done in January. So, once the metalwork was completed, it was time to get anodizing. And anodizing is when things went really wrong. Yeah, not a pretty sight. So what happened there? Well, I anodized the MHS pieces, and they anodized very poorly. So the only real option there was to strip the anodizing off with a lye bath and start again. Unfortunately, I think I messed up with the lye bath. I think I over-concentrated the amount of lye that I added to the water, because I put them in for about the same amount of time as I normally do, and when I pulled them out and rinsed them off, yeah, the lye had cleared off the anodizing, but it also started attacking the aluminium underneath. And by the time I got to it, it was too late. There was nothing that could be done, and those two parts were done for. They were ruined. Yeah, there was nothing really could be done to fix them. So, very frustrated, I went back to the drawing board. I broke open my notebook of lightsaber ideas in search of a design that I could adapt to salvage this lightsaber. As I was going through it, I found this lightsaber from the 2003 animated Clone Wars cartoon. So I do really love what Genndy Tartakovsky did with the Graflex form in that lightsaber. I mean, it's obviously a Graflex-inspired design, but it's distilled the form of it down into something that's clearly from the Graflex or related to the Graflex, but not a Graflex. And I really like that simplicity of that design. So I decided to, well, play around with the Graflex form as the final shape of the saber. Seeing as I already had the 4 grips on the bottom, I decided that the Graflex was pretty much the appropriate shape to go. So I kept the activation box, which, seeing as the Carl Katarn activation box was pretty much a Graflex inspired thing anyway, I just smoothed it over, made it a little bit more comfortable to hold in my hand. I added some fake bunny grips. I added some fake bunny ears made out of some aluminium U-section, which I then anodized. The blade retention screw and crystal chamber retention screw are made out of PC case thumb screws that are meant to be an imitation of the Graflex red buttons. And yes, I thought that I would just add some ventilation holes onto the side of the hilt, just to show off the 3D printed parts that you normally wouldn't see. I want to. So, in conclusion, yeah, there it is. This was a fun little build. It took me significantly longer than I intended, and went through at least a half dozen redesigns before I got to its final form. I'm probably not going to keep it as it is for the rest of its days. I am not enough of a fan of NeoPixels to keep it as a NeoPixel Saber. I'm probably going to end up redesigning the chassis to run an RGB LED. Yes, the other thing I'm not fully satisfied and intend to change down the line are those grips there. I'm not a massive fan of the 3D printed ones that I've got on. I'll probably replace them with some hand-filed aluminium ones later. But I reached a point on this build where I just decided that I was done with it and I want to move on to the next one, and I've just had enough of working on this. So I could have waited another week and completed it, but I just decided to say sod it and call it a day. So yeah, this will probably get upgraded at some point in the future, but yeah, for now it's done. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to say about this. So I found